I feel like whatever is taking place around me is love.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how I choose to see it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who will be like, "Well, make sure that you're protecting yourself." And I'm like, I just choose not to see it in a good or bad way. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I just choose to look at it like it just is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense? I feel like that's kind of like vague, but it makes sense to me to not be looking at life in a good or bad type of way. Like
Mm-hmm.
entities or energies, like they just are. And you know, I don't know. I just like to kind of be free with it. And I feel like once you start assigning good, bad, evil to stuff, it induces fear.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be afraid of anything,
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like if
you
you were
know?
the very first woman having a baby and you've never heard about pregnancy or labor, and it's just almost like what's her face from the Blue Lagoon. They didn't know nothing about no babies
Yeah.
being born, and then she was like, oh, she's freaking out. So when you're going through something that you don't understand, even though there is pain attached to it, or there's this whole crazy scene, blood is shooting out everywhere, it can be incredibly distressful. It can be really, really upsetting. And I think a lot of people who go into the psychic realm or start having psychic experiences because we are in a physical reality that supports the negative experience or those vibrations, those lower
Mhm.
vibrations. There's a reason why the physical world cannot exist without it. And because
Yeah.
the whole point of the physical world is to have the ability to have suffering in some way or another because it's giving us a chance to have these experiences that we're supposed to go through. And when you are coming from a place where you're negative minded and you have fear, you have the fear of God built into you. Like, if I don't understand it and I haven't learned about it and this is scary, it must be the devil or it must be evil or it must be bad or whatever.
Yeah.
So when people come from that place and then they are dealing with any kind of paranormal or supernatural activity, they add on all of that excess fear and lower vibrations to that experience,
Mm.
and they start to pile in all of this extra energy that has more of a lower vibrational tone. So it's really,
Right.
really tricky. I always tell people, like, if you're looking to like protect yourself from a certain kind of energy or whatever, you don't have to go through this whole song and dance to protect yourself or to elevate your energy. All you have to do is, one, acknowledge your greatness, acknowledge the divinity within you, because by just acknowledging that, automatically it gives you so much power and control over your reality. Two, don't approach everything from a perspective of fear, and instead just try to understand it. Try to understand it as best as you can. But if you have the intention of only dealing with higher vibratory states, despite the pain, despite the trauma, despite the fear, because we're still going to feel fear, it's not going to go away. But if you choose to come from a place of like high vibes, love, empowerment, power, that sense of control, nothing's gonna hurt you. Like, it's on an energy
Yeah.
level, it's not gonna hurt you, because what you're doing at that point is you're creating this bubble of protection around you, and that bubble of
Right.
protection is going to become your sword and shield, and it's going to keep you from protection. Did I ever tell you about that time that I was practicing my affirmation, my daily protective prayer and affirmation? And did I say about that time where I made a guy like completely, like, this guy was like a threat, and he like reacted to the prayer as soon as I said it? Did I ever tell you about that time?
Mm-mm.
So back in the day, back when I was in high school, I'm still a Sylvia Brown fan, but I read a lot of her books and stuff, and she used to tell us, say this and say that, and this will help you. And so one of the prayers that I used to say was, God, surround me with the light of the Holy Spirit, the light of protection. Surround me with the sacred circle of mirrors to reflect negativity back towards itself. Surround me with a band
Mm.
of angels in a circular way, protecting me from harm. And so I used to just say this every day, but I wouldn't just say it. I would visualize it. I would imagine it. I would see it. And I did it for a long time. And this was around the time where I had my first awakening, because I was trying to create more of a positive energy around me, etc. Fast forward, I'd been doing this it became like a regular thing for me. Every single morning I would say it. I would just automatically say it.
Mhm.
So, and practice that whole visual thing. And it became second nature for me. So I was going down the street because I used to walk to school in the morning. I was going down the street. And as I was walking down the street, there was this guy who was walking on the sidewalk right in front of me. He was coming towards me and he looked kind of iffy. Like he looked sketchy. And I was like, okay. And I didn't feel right. Something felt weird, which is weird because, I was like, why am I feeling this way? And I was even questioning why I was feeling this way. I was like, why? It almost was similar to when I had that incident with going and parking my car in the parking lot and they stole
Yeah.
my wallet and my phone, right?
Mhm.
Same feeling. So I was like, something's wrong. Something's wrong. And it's almost like a panic that goes off inside of you. Something is wrong. Something is wrong. And I could feel it in my gut. Like something was telling me, like, this is dangerous. Like, this is dangerous. Danger, danger, danger. It's like danger with robbers and danger. Like that whole thing was going off inside of me. And I was like, oh my God. And in the moment, I didn't want to do anything because I didn't want to seem rude to this person because they were just walking towards me. And there was no indication of danger, but I just felt something was wrong. So instead of like doing, acting crazy and like running across the street or running away like a maniac, I was like, I'm just going to say my prayer, which I should have just ran away.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to say my prayer, right? I was just going to say my prayer. So I did. I said my prayer and my affirmation and the minute that I said it and I, visualized it immediately, I kid you not, the moment I
Mhm.
stopped saying it, that guy, he stopped dead in his tracks and he walked into the street, into traffic, into the street, and around me in this massive circle. And then he came
Mhm.
back onto the sidewalk as if he was just avoiding me completely. And then he continued walking. And I was like, what the hell? And it had he walked across the street, I mean, that would have been something else. I probably wouldn't have even thought it was that significant. I would have just thought, thank God he like
Yeah.
walked across the street. But because he walked across into traffic around me in this massive circle, almost walking over to the other side and then coming back, that to me was like, okay, this worked. Like this totally worked.
Yeah.
And so I always believed it. And then years later, I want to say maybe this was like 6 or 7 years later, I was working at the Starbucks in the medical center in Houston. And I was I didn't want to pay for the parking because the parking in the medical center is ridiculous. Like you will literally
Well,
have to
yeah.
work a second job just to park your
That's
car in
how
one
it
of them
works nowadays.
garages. Oh yeah, no, I don't think so. I ain't trying
Mhm.
to pay that, $150 a month bill for freaking parking no,
Mhm.
that's ridiculous. So, I would park in like the neighborhood and then I would walk over. And so that's what I would do. Well, same thing. And what was interesting is that morning I on the way to work was I actually heard a um broadcast, like a radio broadcast on one of the radio stations, and they were talking about these break-ins in that same neighborhood the night before and how people
Mhm.
were having like they were like freaked out or worried because they thought that the house was going to be, and this is like a nice neighborhood next to the medical center. These are like really nice houses.
Yeah.
So I'm walking down the street and they describe the guy on the radio program or whatever on the news. So I'm walking down the street. I'm walking. It's early morning. It's maybe like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. It is early. It is late enough that the sun was already starting to peek through, so there was enough light, but it was still too early. Nobody was awake, and I was the only person on that street. And so this guy walks out from the side of a house. He's dressed in all kinds of like ratty clothes, and he matches the description of what I saw on the freaking on I heard on the radio. And I was like, and I was like, oh my God, and I was freaked out. And so I was like, oh my God. So he's walking down. It's almost like a repeat of that first incident. He's walking towards me, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And so of course, I don't run off because of course I didn't learn my lesson the first time. So
Right.
instead I
Mhm.
like said my affirmation or my prayer. Exact same thing happens. He stops as soon as I finish. He stops. He walks across into the street. He goes around me in this massive circle, comes back onto the sidewalk, and continues walking as if I wasn't there, but he was avoiding something. I was like,
Mm.
okay, 2 times has this worked
That's
on
a
me.
super prayer.
that's a super that's a super thing, right? That's a super thing. And that's why like
Yeah.
that's why I tell people like if you have a prayer does work, but it isn't if you're just praying because in the moment you think that one prayer is going to do it, there isn't enough power there. There isn't enough. You are the power behind the prayer. It's the affirmation.
Right.
You are the power behind the prayer. So when you say
Mhm.
something and you intend and you have this whole visualization and you've built into it, as soon as you are done with that, and if you've done it over and over again, the power accumulates over time and there's a charge that builds. So for me, it didn't take me but that one time after I'd already done it for like a long time actually, that it worked and it served its purpose. And so with like our tools, our crystals, the eye that you have,
Mhm.
you don't
Mhm.
need those things because your power is in you. But if you
Right.
have that and you use it as a tool or as a talisman for protection or whatnot, it's going to work as long as you use it on a consistent basis and you put the belief behind
Right.
it.